Thank you, Mr. Chair. The following is the hearing on the request of David Hobart, agent for the owner, to consider case number 06CUP15, application filed on March 24th, 2006, for a conditional use permit and to accept an exemption pursuant to section 15303E of the state guidelines for the implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Ms. Almy?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Aaron Brigg will give the presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Aaron Briggs, and I have a brief presentation for you today. Today I would like to present you a request for a minor conditional use permit for entry gates of over 6 feet in height located in the front yard setback. The project site is located at 85 Butterfly Lane, just south of Highway 101. The surrounding neighborhood consists of lots ranging from 1/5 of an acre to several acres in size, typically single-family homes and 2 condominium complexes. The Music Academy of the West is located directly south and west of the project site. The subject lot fronts Butterfly Lane and is adjacent to the exit driveway of the Music Academy of the West. The request is for a minor conditional use permit to allow previously constructed 6-foot, 8-inch tall entry gates to a condominium complex. The gates have a steel tube frame and a rough cedar face, as seen here. Access to 2 other condominiums located at the project site would also be provided through the subject gates. This conditional use permit application was submitted in order to resolve an open building violation filed in February of 2006. The issuance of this minor conditional use permit will formally close the building violation and bring the existing gates into conformity with the county's coastal zoning ordinance, Article 2. We have some pictures of other gates in the neighborhood. This gate here is located at 1130 Channel Drive, right around the corner from the intersection of Channel Drive and Butterfly Lane. This gate here is located at 8789 Butterfly Lane, right next door to the project site. Another gate here on Butterfly Lane, and a third gate here on Butterfly Lane. The project was reviewed by the Montecito Board of Architectural Review on May 22nd, where it received positive comments. The MBAR directed the applicant to return for preliminary final review upon project approval by your commission. As conditioned, the project can be found consistent with the comprehensive plan, including the Montecito Community Plan and the Article 2 zoning requirements. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the required findings, including the CEQA findings, accept the exemption pursuant to the state CEQA guidelines, and to approve the project, case number 06 CUP number 15, subject to the conditions of approval. And that concludes staff's presentation, unless Ms. Almy has anything to add.
The commissioners, have there been any visits to the site?
I visited the site.
Mr. Chair, I visited the site as well.
I did visit the site.
Also visited.
Also visited the site. Okay.
Is the applicant present?
I am present. I'm the contractor who...
Would you like to make a comment?
Well, I just want to clear up one thing.
Why don't you go to the podium?
Over here? They can't hear you otherwise. Is the mic on? Dave Hobart, which you show as the applicant, worked for John C. Lippum Construction, Inc. I am John C. Lippum. I am the man who called the subcontractor and had the gate installed for my customer, Mr. Lou Goldstein, who has purchased the property from Elliott. The first phone call came through to me that we were in violation. They had a chain link, a chain that barred that entryway because their gate was no longer operable. Lou Goldstein wanted, it was one of the conditions of buying it, to have this secured. So he's an executive of Warner Brothers, and this is a beach house for him to enjoy the Santa Barbara weather and the Santa Barbara community. I was unaware because we matched a gate that was already present on the property. That was the instruction to the subcontractor who actually built the gate. But your records are still showing Dave Hobart as the applicant. Actually, the application was made on my behalf as John C. Lippum Construction.
And would you repeat your name, please?
John, middle initial, C, Lippum, Lipham.
Thank you, Mr. Lippum.
I'm the license holder and the owner of the company.
Are there any questions or comments for the applicant? Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Public comment, no public comment. Public comment period is closed. The item is open for discussion, deliberation by the commission. Commissioner Tilsher?
It's very helpful that we have MBAR's comments in all these applications, because it's really gives you an insight into what their thinking is. So I'm glad we're seeing that on every one of them. That's really helpful. I'd sure like to see the gates in the future set back from the road. More and more gates are being set on practically on the road. This one's very close to the road, and in a lot of cases, I think they can be set back and not hurt the applicant in any particular way, but avoid that crowding of roads and that urban feel that we keep getting more and more of in Montecito. So that's my only comment.
Is there any other comment? I gather that this item will be returned to the MBAR for final, preliminary and final approval after our deliberation.
That's
and
correct, sir.
position. Commissioner Phillips?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow up on Mr. Tilsher's comments, how would that be accomplished? And that meaning, as a matter of course, these gates would be indented down the driveway a bit? Yes. Can MBAR do that, or is that something that needs to be done on a different level to implement?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, certainly the MBAR can provide input to an applicant on the design and suggest that kind of relief from the streetscape. However, there would be no ordinance, fist to support that. It would just be design suggestions.
It would require an ordinance?
It would seem to me that it would require some ordinance language to make sure, if you want a hard and fast rule, yes.
Because MBAR has discretion in siting and movement of the home.
That is true. They have input on that as well, and they do have input on the siting and location of gates, but nothing is as effective as the black and white word of an ordinance to accomplish what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gottschalker?
Yeah, I think MBAR does consistently look at how far gates are set back from the road. In fact, they looked at another one on Monday that I know of. And what they've been trying to do is sort of be in conjunction with and communication with the Montecito Fire Department, which would like to see gates set back 14 feet from the edge of pavement, which allows a fire truck to pull in before they have to deal with the lock boxes, which gets them off the, and so I know that Chairman Spann and the Montecito Association have been meeting in the road encroachment subcommittee to look at, exactly what Ms. Almy is saying, is how to put some teeth in the ordinances with regards to our roads. and road encroachment. And I know they're looking at, I mean, one of the biggest issues that was brought to the attention of around road encroachment is the proliferation of not only gates on the edge of pavement, but also the decorative solid mailboxes that seem to be appearing more and more inside the roads. These like sandstone or whatever people now seem to want to build instead of just putting a post in the ground. And those encroach into the right of way because the postal service wants to be able to drive right up to them. Well, in some instances in the last couple of years, what's been found is that because we have no sidewalks, those solid structure mailboxes intrude on the edge of the right-of-way, which is where many people in Montecito walk, kind of on that little dirt that's there. So it's an issue that I know that the Montecito Association and the community is interested in dealing with, in a more black and white way than we have in the past.
Commissioner Tilsher?
If I can just add a little bit to that, MBAR is very active in, and Mr. Spann is active in trying to set back these gates. And I met with him on one particular one on Schoolhouse Road, and it was going to be right on the road, which is a private road. It's a schoolhouse lane, I guess, perhaps, just off the main Schoolhouse Road. And actually, the owner of the property was very willing to set those gates back, and we agreed to set them back 12 feet. So I think sometimes the owners are more agreeable than you think to setting these gates back. And even though it's important to have some form of written ordinance to deal with all these issues, which this encroachment committee is going to be trying to formulate.
Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff, for the purposes of the viewers and the good citizens of Montecito, could you review the ordinance process, the initiation of an ordinance? Thank you.
I've been
Secretary
accused
Miska.
by Ms. Almy of being a microphone hog, so give her the opportunity.
That's hard with Miss Almy around.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, ordinances are typically initiated either at the staff level or by the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors. If the Planning Commission were to request an ordinance change, then we would have to determine whether or not we had the resources to do it at a particular time. Could we do it immediately or not? Assuming we can, it's really quite simple. We try and ascertain from whoever's initiating it what they're trying to accomplish, and I feed that to Mr. Langle, and he feeds me something back that we hope meets that request, and County Council reviews it, and then we bring it to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the Board of Supervisors. And if it affects the coastal zone, then on to the Coastal Commission for their review and certification. So it's the steps are quite simple. It can be a long process if, number one, the ordinance amendment requires environmental review. In this case, I don't think it would. And number two, if the Coastal Commission is involved, if it's an amendment to Article 2. Otherwise, it's, probably takes 4 to 6 months, depending on staff resources.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, given the safety issue, in addition to, I think, the aesthetic concern, I'm not sure how we would do this, but would you consider at our next hearing to have a discussion about this?
Commissioner Gottstanker.
Well, it's my understanding that what's happening with a number of the subcommittees that we put together, what is it now, 3-4 months ago when we first met with Mr. Spann around some of these issues that the MBAR is consistently having to deal with, that is one of the things that all of these subcommittees are looking at is what is, I know I met last Wednesday with a subcommittee that's looking at the inconsistencies between the ordinance and the Montecito Architectural Guidelines and Development Standards. I mean, there are inconsistencies in the way the ordinance reads and the way the guidelines read. And, you know, we've started coming up with a work program that, when it's complete, we will bring to this commission. And I think the encroachment committee is doing the same thing. So as far as timing is concerned, I don't know that I think that it's appropriate to separate one issue out, like the setbacks of the gates. It seems to me that the way to do this is to have all these subcommittees get their recommendations together and then have a discussion on all of these things, such that we're not piecemealing the ordinance amendments that the subcommittees feel need to take place or not. I know one of the things that we talked about on Wednesday was whether the subcommittee was actually looking for ordinance amendments, or whether we were looking to update the Montecito Architectural Guidelines and Development Standards so they more closely match the ordinance without requiring ordinance amendments. So I think it's a little more complex than just bringing one item as far as the setback of gates from the edge of pavement. Right now.
Commissioner Tilsher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually are having our second meeting tomorrow morning on the encroachments. And Supervisor Carbajal may or may not be able to be there, but we had invited June Pajot from staff, but she's on vacation, I believe. But Bob Collector will be there for representing the Montecito Association, Jack Overall from the Montecito Association, Tony Spann, and perhaps somebody else from the MBAR. And I don't know whether our chair, Mr. McGrivley, are you going to be able to attend?
Pardon me?
Did you get our email about attending tomorrow morning?
No, I did not.
Oh, my email system's not working.
All right. I was curious to know, how far along are you in the process? It's
Well,
just
this is the second meeting. This will be really the first meeting that we'll get into some real substantive suggestions as to, and it'll deal with not only gates, but it'll deal with walls, hedges, street trees, lighting, everything that might be in the encroachment area or close to the encroachment area. So.
Yes, and as I recall, the question of public safety was an important consideration in your deliberations.
Very.
Good.
Mr. Chair, I can withdraw my suggestion. It looks like we're moving ahead.
Mis-
Yes.
Another
Mr. Chair,
other areas.
can I make a suggestion? I think
Secretary.
it's certainly more efficient to deal with a number of ordinance amendments at one time, and it sounds like there is a lot in the works. Maybe what we would want to do next month is just get a status update from the commissioners and from staff on where we are on all of these subcommittees, and we can sort of see how we think this might flow out. I'm not suggesting we should wait until everything is resolved, because if you do that, sometimes nothing ever happens. But we might have a better idea of where we're at, because it sounds like a number of things are moving forward.
Thank you. I think that would be very useful. All right, is there any other comment on this subject of the agenda item?
Oh, yes.
Commissioner Gostenker.
I noticed in the MBAR comments that no consensus of whether lights should be located on the top of the post or on the front. Can I see the photograph of the existing gates again?
Yeah, that's the one.
So at this point in time, there are no lights, but it looks to me like that is the intention.
I have nothing to indicate that they have the intention of putting lights on top of the gate posts. I have not heard anything about that.
Does the general contractor know about that?
Absolutely. It has been.
Can you go to the podium, please?
You can clearly see the conduit in the center of the column. The owner of the property now, Mr. Goldstein, has gone to one of your local vendors to have a lights made that more closely match the other gate that is just right at this piece of property. So the intention was to put a light on the top of the gate. It can still easily be done to put the light on the front of the column if that's what the commission wants to have done.
Well, I don't know what the other commissioners feel, but consistently, when I was on MBAR and even in speaking with MBAR at this time, there is a desire to reduce the amount of light from along roadways from gates, and my personal recommendation would be, well, I don't know. I think, without actually seeing the design of the lights, it's very difficult to say whether they should belong on. In this instance right here, I think those lights are too big. So my recommendation to MBAR would be to review the design of the lights very carefully and have them as minimal as possible. And then I would concur with that the translucent glass should be used with a very low wattage, is their second comment here. I think it's always unfortunate when the MBAR and this commission have to deal with already built, already designed, already ordered instances. It sort of ties our hands as to, because it's difficult to ask an applicant once they've spent the money to go back.
Well, I haven't seen the lights that Mr. Goldstein
I know,
ordered.
that's why I'm recommending to the
All that he
MBAR
told me
that
was they were made to match these lights, and those carry 15-watt bulbs. I think there are 3 in each lamp.
okay,
That would be all I know, and I'm not even sure of that.
yeah.
It looks
Well,
to me
we
like-
don't have light design, we don't have a design for the lights in the packet that was submitted to us, which then gives rise to the question for me whether, in fact, MBAR has actually seen the design of the lights.
Well, the lights that he's ordered is from a local company here that to match these lights, and I don't think that cost cannot be prohibitive. If the light needs to be submitted, I'll go to whoever he's ordered them from and try to get a picture or a drawing or something that would tell you exactly what the light looks like.
When you compared the proposal to the lights on this visual, these look as though there are transparent glass.
They are transparent
Yeah.
glass.
And I believe that Commissioner Gostanker's suggestion is a good one, that the glass at least be translucent.
Well, we have no control over this one. I mean, this is a piece of property that
We
Mr.
understand
Goldstein
that.
has no interest in. The translucent glass or the limitation of wattage, I don't think he cares. He just wants a very small amount of light when you come up to the gate.
I think we've expressed our view on this subject adequately.
All right.
Is there any other comment before we take a motion? Perhaps Commissioner Gostanker would like to make the motion in view of the conditions which she'd like to impose.
Okay, so we want a motion to adopt, to approve this case with the findings in 1, 2, and 3. Is that what we've decided? This, we don't have to read all those numbers anymore? Okay, that's what was confusing me. With the condition that the lights, that the design of the lights be reviewed by the MBAR, and that the use of translucent glass and low wattage should be used.
Is there a second to the motion?
May I ask Commissioner Godstanger if she'd be willing to amend the motion slightly?
Certainly.
Could you go along with putting the lights on the front of those gate posts as opposed to on top of the gate posts? I think I think there'll be less bulk on the road, and there'll be more down lighting rather than up lighting that will occur because they'll be on the front of the gate posts.
Absolutely. So I will amend my motion to the recommendation that the lights be moved to the front of the posts rather on top of the posts.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Mr. Chair,
wait
we
a
missed
minute,
the second.
Well, Tilsher, Commissioner Tilsher.
I'll
asked for
second the
amendment.
motion because after she was amended, probably should have seconded it.
We got ahead of ourselves. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a break here for a few minutes.